Hi all, thanks for joining us for our panel discussion. I'm Tim Pearce. I chair the Dentsu Diversity and Inclusivity Committee. It's quite a new committee, but it's already gathering quite a lot of speed. So at Dentsu, we recognise that cultural diversity is of course a business imperative, but more importantly, it is a moral and a cultural one. And we recognise that BAME representation within that is a crucial part of the wider diversity and inclusivity conversation, which is why we built this Diversity and Inclusivity Committee, the D&I Committee, I'll call it. It's sort of an umbrella of 5 key pillars. That is I'm Proud, which is LGBT+. That is One, which is gender equality. It is Represent, which is BAME. It is Wellbeing, and it is Parents and Carers. So within those 5 pillars, we pretty much cover the entire employee base of our network. So the reason we pulled all those 5 key pillars together is because we all share a common goal of wanting to empower employees and make them feel like they can bring their whole selves to work and drive positive cultural change, which I expect is why everybody who's watching this is watching this. We want a workforce that is representative of our nation's cultures, where everyone sort of feels a sense of belonging, and that is a massive task. And it is as much a responsibility of you and I as it is of our senior leadership. So it really is a conversation that everybody needs to be involved with. All of our pillars were built from the ground up by sort of passionate, driven employees who wanted to drive that positive change. And so our message from us to you guys today is really, really simple. Positive D&I cultural change is right. And our ask is also pretty simple. Be bold and take it upon yourselves to drive that positive change in your organizations, regardless of your level of seniority or your role or what it is you do or who you are. It's everybody's responsibility. So with that in mind, I've got a panel of those self-motivated leaders of change in Dentsu who built the Represent pillar. I'm going to ask them a few questions, but before we do that, can you all just introduce yourselves and tell me a little bit about why you were motivated to create the BAME network or become part of it? Venya, should we start with you?
Sure. So hi, I'm Venya. I'm strategy partner at Cara UK and co-chair of the Represent Committee. Really pleased to be here. I think for me, the reason why I wanted to kind of start, a movement around BAME is because I never really had much of an interplay between my background and my work, apart from the odd pub joke about me being a Sri Lankan princess. It's something I could quite often downplayed. But I realized when a very senior client of mine walked in the room and was very authentic and proud of his South Asian background, I walked away feeling so inspired and so motivated to actually think about how important representation and role models is for people from BAME communities in the advertising industry. So that was one of the main reasons why I think it's important to start one.
Anisha.
Hi, yeah, so I'm Anisha. I'm a comms manager at Cara and a co-chair of Represent as well. So I actually had a complicated relationship with my culture and background growing up, and by like complicated I mean I rejected it quite often. And this was something that changed as I matured and started uni and started working, and I developed a newfound love and appreciation of being Indian. And so this journey has really helped me to understand the importance of embracing your heritage and the importance of society embracing your heritage as well. And the impact that systematic oppression can have on the individual and on the wider community manifests itself in so many different ways, and it's so complex. And we can begin like untangling this web by engaging in open and honest conversations and initiatives around discrimination and diversity. And in this way, we can enact change and improve diversity and the way it's received within DAN.
Thank you. Elekia.
Hi, I'm Elekia. So I'm an account director at Gyro here at DAN. And also co-chair of Represent. And I think for me, honestly, it was being part of an industry that often, engages in harmless banter and being in a room with all these people at all of these events and feeling that I couldn't be authentically myself a lot of the time, being made to feel other. Also kind of looking back at my career, I'm very proud of where I am today and what I've managed to achieve, but I realised that actually I don't have a role model within the industry or within any company that I've worked for that looks like me. And I'm fearful for people kind of coming up through the ranks that they also won't have that role model. So I think, you know, when I joined Dan, I was struck by, you know, the makeup of the business, and how that kind of peters out as you get more senior. So I want to change that for future generations. I say that like I'm really old, but you know what I mean.
No, that's great. Okay, thank you. I think straight into our first question then. Why, specifically about the advertising industry, why do you think it's so important that the ad industry has this conversation around BAME representation? Venya?
I mean, the world is in reality an incredible melting pot of cultures and identities, and our industry plays a very important role as a mirror to that world. And it really boggles my mind that despite of all of this, we still have despite of all of that richness, we still have a lot of arcane structures and norms and biases in place. And as an advertising industry, it's only now that we've really started to have an open conversation about it. Don't get me wrong, I've been in the industry for 10 years and I'm only having this conversation now. And I'm seriously struck by the urgency of it. Someone in the industry commented recently that diversity shouldn't be a problem, that it should in fact be the solution to a lot of the industry's problem. And the diversity dividend, so to speak, is continually proven time and again, study after study. And yet, you know, we had the IPA census come out a couple of weeks ago, and it showed that we are regressing in BAME representation. We as an advertising industry play such a powerful role in those biases and the norms and the stories that we put out into that world. And, you know, we reinforce our consumer biases by planning media in certain ways. We are part of that problem. And so improving the representation of our industry in the work we create and the people we employ within it shouldn't just be something that pads out our CSR goals. It should be absolutely a business imperative and a moral responsibility, in my opinion.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to chat about that one, Anisha?
Yeah, and like coming from this from a slightly different angle and looking at the output of advertising, working in the industry, we understand like the power and influence that advertising has on the mass, more so than the average consumer necessarily realizes. So it's our duty to ensure that we're providing a fair representation of the BAME community within our advertising and content. And there's two general kind of tropes associated with this. So it's one, whether we're not being included at all, like the ads we see on TV, for example. So that means, are we worthy? We're not worthy of representation. Or we are included, but these inclusions miss the mark completely. For example, though representation has increased in the recent years, only 7% featured BAME people as a main protagonist. So are we being sidelined? Or if we are included, sometimes we're portrayed in ways that amplify certain stereotypes. So like the recent ban on gender stereotypes was put in place, for example, because they can perpetuate harmful limitations of how people see themselves and how people see others. And the ban was put in place for a great reason. And the same principle applies to the BAME community as well, because, you know, constant messaging about how the BAME community is perceived and represented through media starts to build up over time and weighs down on the individual consumer and how they interact with the world around them.
Cool, thank you. Elekia, coming to you, I think just thinking about represent being one of the most newly established pillars of the D&I committee, but it's had a hell of an impact already. What are the biggest challenges that you face when trying to set this up?
Oh, many. So one of those is obviously time. The steering committee, we all have full-time jobs, and very kind of high pressure, a lot of the time jobs. So finding the time to dedicate to really push this forward at pace has been quite difficult. But obviously it just takes a group of very passionate people, and we've tried to make it happen as quickly as we possibly can. But that is difficult in terms of our time, and also finding time with leadership, and getting them to continuously give us that time as well has been quite a challenge. They're like the most time poor people on the planet. We know that when we're running our campaigns trying to target them. So that's been a very difficult thing. But also we've been met with some challenges from individuals within the business. And I think it's been difficult to try and portray what we're trying to do as a very inclusive thing. I think there's kind of two sides of the same coin here. There's people who identify as BAME that might see this as a negative thing, in that we could be deemed as trying to create kind of a group or a club that doesn't include everyone, that further makes us feel other from the rest of the organisation. And then there's the flip of that coin, where people who don't identify as BAME but care and should care, but don't want to be too heavily involved in a conversation where they might speak out of line or say something that is uncomfortable. And so one challenge that we've had is trying to really give that view of being inclusive, and this being a conversation for everyone to be a part of, and not, not sidelining anyone or making anyone feel uncomfortable. So I think that's probably, obviously the time thing is really difficult, and trying to create awareness, but also getting the right message out there has been incredibly difficult. We conducted a survey that Anisha can probably speak to a bit more, and some of the feedback that we got was, you shouldn't be doing this at all. You're just, creating another issue. You're creating another kind of Black History Month, when really we should just be embedded and not highlight the issue. But we can't stress enough how much this needs to be inclusive, and we want to make sure that everyone's part of that conversation in order to drive change forwards.
Okay, so yeah, I was going to ask, like I said, it has had a huge impact already, the represent pillar of the committee. You must have seen some positives already. So, tell me a bit about some of those impacts that you have seen. Anisha?
Yeah, sure. So just to touch what Elekia said about like how it's been difficult trying to get a message out, and some people don't always agree with us or on the same page or understand why we're doing what we're doing. But on the flip side, equally, there's also been like-minded people, and there's quite a supportive network that we've been able to build as well, and that's been a huge positive. It's already improved like my day-to-day life, and hopefully it'll improve the day-to-day lives of other members of the network as we continue to grow and do our work. And this survey that we actually sent out was to help kind of gauge honest views that the BAME community had within DAN on diversity and discrimination, like whether it's positive or negative. And I think that in itself has been just so educational and so enlightening in helping us to understand what we want to do and what the BAME community collectively thinks about diversity and discrimination. And crucially, I think one of the best things that's come out of it is that it's given us an action plan. So we can take these results and we can see what people, what challenges people have, and we can go away and work on them. We know now what we need to focus on for the next year. And so in this way, like, we can sort of see into the future and see what actions we can take to help Dan become a better place to work for the BAME community. I think I'm really looking forward to like seeing that take place, and there's no reason why it shouldn't.
Oh, of course, yeah. Go back very quickly to the challenges around this. Do you think that there is a challenge of around the general awareness of the challenges that the BAME community face outside of the BAME community?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing, and it kind of is a challenge but also a positive, and Anisha touched on this, I think through our kind of smaller conversations as a group, I felt empowered personally to then take those conversations further afield and have really open, calm conversations, because I already feel like I've got kind of people who've got my back in these guys and the rest of the committee. So I think being able to have those calmer conversations where I know it doesn't have to be an argument. I've had really powerful conversations with people who don't identify as BAME, and I've seen them kind of have some light bulb moments where they have got that raised awareness, and it's low at the moment, and I don't think that's anybody's fault necessarily. I think people just need to be open to us, you know, bringing that conversation forwards, and it's happening, and I think we're at the beginning of it and we're all super excited.
Yeah, and I think just to build on that, I think to Elekia's point, one of the most powerful things I've found in this experience is the sense of that sense of community and a sense of actually, it's exactly to that point, it's a safe space that we can talk to each other about what's going on, and it's amazing how much you open up about stuff you've actually kept really buried throughout your career and you don't realize, and actually it's so cathartic to just even talk about it, and that's one of the biggest tenets of Represent and what we want to do for people from BAME backgrounds within Dentsu is to create that safe space that we can come together and talk about these things.
And I think people really underestimate the power of empathy and being able to say to someone, I understand how you feel, and I understand, I can sort of understand what you must have been thinking all these years. I think there's so much power in that. And I think that comes with all the education jobs that we're doing within the network and with each other. And those conversations have been so helpful, because as soon as you open that kind of conversation, then the amount of stuff afterwards that you're able to talk about and that you're able to unpack is incredible.
Yeah, great. So clearly the direction that we all need to go in every aspect of diversity is to get as many people talking about it as possible. Something I just want to reiterate to the viewers is that none of the people in our committee were asked or appointed. They've all stepped forward. They've all taken it upon themselves to just sort of do something. And again, that is the message that we want to drive today, is just start doing something, and it will be welcome. So last question for all you guys. So far, so good. It's a great network, and it's already well established. We want to grow it, but where do you want to see this network get to? Where do you want it to go? Let's start with Anisha.
Yeah, sure. So I think it'd be really great to see the network become a leader of diversity in the industry, and have this to be backed up by the numbers as well. And to put it really simply, I'd like to look around the office and see more people from a diverse range of backgrounds. It would make so much more of a difference, and to know that these backgrounds and these different cultures are welcomed and celebrated, and that everyone has freedom to come as themselves. I think that would be a really great future to look forward towards.
Elekia.
For me, and it's probably a point that I keep banging on about, but I just think this network can really signify a shift in how we as an industry, we as a business, deal with race and how we handle those conversations, because I think one of the biggest challenges is that initial conversation, and not jumping down someone's throat if they say something incorrect, but really being trusting and warm with each other, and accepting that we might get it wrong at the first turn, and making sure that with that we get to a place where we're all comfortable. I think comfort is a big thing, and I think lots of people who are from a BAME background and who aren't from a BAME background have such huge levels of discomfort that if we can shift that would be an amazing place to be in, just so we can at least have a conversation where we're not all scared of misspeaking.
Venya.
Agree with everything that these guys have said. Not a huge amount to add. I think just apart from, one of the big reasons I think that actually embracing our differences and celebrating our differences, I think will just make us all the more, not just at Dentsu, but in the wider industry, make us all the more creative and all the more kind of competitive. And I think we need to be encouraging that diversity of thought, diversity of workforce, diversity of kind of the work we create. So I hope that, you know, in time we can collaborate with other networks in the industry, because this isn't just a Dentsu thing. You know, we want to work with everyone as a collective to kind of lead the charge on making the industry more representative.
Brilliant. I think we're very nearly out of time. Just let me say thank you to all three of you for taking the time to do this panel. Like you just said, Venya, this is not a Dentsu thing that we're trying to achieve here. This is an industry-wide cultural shift that we're trying to achieve here. So anybody watching this, whether you're at another agency or a media or anywhere, client, whoever it is, reach out. Let's join up. Let's join this conversation together and get more and more people talking. So with that, thank you, the three of you, and thank you for everybody who's watched. And yeah, let's keep it moving.
Thank you, Tim.